Hey everybody, Dave Costello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today's guest is Krishna Pendyala. He is an expert on the art and science of human judgment and choice making. His pioneering work on judgment quotient, or JQ, is being recognized as the third intelligence beyond IQ and EQ. In addition to all of that, he's also had a very prolific career. He's been the co-founder of multiple tech companies. He's an author. He was also a COO and I believe was chief coach at a financial firm for a while. So for all the accounting firm owners listening, he knows the blend of art and science when it comes to building businesses. And we invited him on today because there is so much uncertainty, worry, anxiety. And what I always found so amazing about Krishna's work is he really talks about how do you understand the inner psychology, your own mindset, what's working inside between your two ears, and how do you make better choices. This is a time where choices big and small really matter. And we were joking a little bit, about just the amount of overeating that's going on in society. And we'll talk about that and how can you cope with so much stress and anxiety and uncertainty. You have no idea what's going on. So very excited to have Krishna on today's show. Krishna, welcome.
Thank you, David. Always great to chat with you.
Yeah, and Krishna is an old mentor of mine, so this is going to be a really fun interview. We might go into a bunch of different avenues and channels because I know so much about Krishna and he knows so much about me. So, well, first off, I talked about it, in the intro was, this is a time where all the information that's coming out is how do you set up a remote work environment? How do you forecast? How do you do what if statements? How do you do better management? But I really want to focus this on the firm owner and trying to think about how to understand and manage your psychology during this time. So I'll leave it open to you. I know there's a lot of different avenues we can go in, but for somebody listening that has a small business, maybe they also have a family, there's just so many data points going on, so much uncertainty. I mean, how do we start, getting our heads back on our shoulders through all the noise that's going on in the world right now?
Well, David, that's an extremely loaded question.
Yeah, that's
And
my specialty.
I'll do the best I can to try to unpack that for you. The first thing is you got to remember that decisions made under panic rarely result in good long-term decisions for us. So that's the first thing. Am I operating in panic? Because when you're in fight or flight response mode, you're really not thinking and you're reacting. And when we react, we are not really thinking about long term. And there's a funny incident or story, parable I made up. Think of it as you own a couch, and a beautiful couch, and you put a candle on one of the arms, and the candle tipped over, and you're now worried that the couch is going to catch fire. So your immediate reaction, and this is a human tendency, is when we see something, we jump and react. So we jump on the candle, grab it, and throw it away, not realizing that we threw it into the Christmas tree. That is my biggest concern right now, is when we react, we don't take the burning candle and throw it into the Christmas tree. So that is the first thing I'd like to discuss, is overreaction or knee-jerk reaction. So hitting the pause button, and one of the things I say is these days we're sitting at home, so we get to see the YouTube play button all the time. So in my mind, every time I see the YouTube play button, I think pause. Stop yourself in your tracks and ask yourself, am I operating out of fear? Because if it's operating out of fear, that usually will be something that doesn't serve you in the long term.
How do you?
Why don't we just stop there
Yeah.
and let you continue, Dave?
Yeah. So, this is a time where and look, I certainly am aligned with when you make decisions from a panic-based mindset, rarely are you making the right decision. How have you found, or what are some effective tools for somebody listening to kind of take a step back and say, okay, I'm kind of going into this place where I'm spiraling out, or I'm making quick judgment. We call it knee-jerk reactions. I think that's happening a lot. And I think that the thing I'm going to challenge the listeners to is maybe you're not doing that for your business. You're saying, no, I created 7 different what if models and I have different inflection points and I have everything planned out. Well, I'm also referring to the knee-jerk decisions and reactions for your family life, for your personal life, right? And so that's what I'm challenging the listeners today is like maybe you are doing that in your business, but if you're not, you're probably doing that for your personal life, because we all have these characters in our brain that's driving these different areas of fear. So if somebody what's a way to stop that and try to start making better decisions in a world where panic is being constantly pushed onto us right now?
I still say hitting the pause button every time there's an impulse. It's really about managing your impulsivity. So, which is the knee-jerk reaction, is how can you do that? Start with the pause button, because if you cannot pause, then you're just going to be led by the forces. Let's just call it the forces, the hidden forces that influences our choices. So, unless you hit the pause button, you cannot stop yourself in your tracks. So that would be my first, whether it's personal, professional, no matter what, hit the pause button. So question yourself, is this the right thing to be doing right now? That's the first one. And now comes what is right. So as you said, what if scenarios is good. I like to use, as you know, David, parables and stories. So when your house is burning down, our natural instinct is to get all concerned about the fire. And we all stand outside on the street and watch the house burn down. But not a single one of us thinks about where we're going to stay the night, or how do we rebuild? Because it's very difficult for the same person to be in all three stages. So the way I suggest is there are three stages that we need to think through. Right now, what's immediately next, and long term in those three areas. And ideally, you want to divide that responsibility among three different people, simply because when your mind is consumed with these big problems in the moment, it's very difficult for you to jump through all three. Even if you have the patience to do that, your mind is not necessarily willing to jump with you. Does that help in any way for you to think about those three phases, and then we can maybe talk about those?
Yeah, and the thing I also want to ask about is you've alluded to these hidden forces. Can we unpack that a little bit? What are the hidden forces we need to be aware of, and then we can go through those stages a
Okay.
little bit more.
So I like acronyms as well. So the title of my book is called Beyond the Pig and the Ape, where the pig stands for our desire for pursuing instant gratification. And in this instance, the pig would want quick resolution because uncertainty is extremely painful. We want immediate gratification, some resolution. When is this going to end? When will life become normal? All these questions are rolling around in most of our minds. The ape stands for avoiding painful experiences. None of us want to be in uncomfortable situations. It's not, doesn't feel good. So here is a classic situation. The pig wants immediate resolution. The ape wants to avoid this uncomfortable situation. So we want to get away from it ASAP. And that's one more reason why we will end up with knee-jerk reactions. And we got to watch, is our ape running the show or is our pig running the show? And as I said, in this case, both of them will get into cahoots and start to make everything you do, justifying everything you do. And that can kind of lead to some pretty unsavory consequences in the future.
Yeah, and I look at it as you have the pig and the ape, and you don't want uncertainty. You don't want to not be in a state of comfort. So, you know, let's say on one hand of suboptimal reaction is to make a knee-jerk reaction in order to satisfy one of those. The other one, and maybe this is really the pig, I don't know, is to then open up YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, whatever, and just zone out for hours or go to food or go to whatever is your kind of, we can't watch sports anymore. So maybe esports, I don't know what people are doing that we're sports fanatics, and you just try to tune out and unplug, and maybe best case scenario, it's a news site or, but, obviously, to get, really real, it could be alcohol. It could be, if you're diabetic, it might be going to sugars you're not supposed to. So how do you, in a world where maybe we only have so much willpower, how do you reserve because you can only have so much discomfort and uncertainty before you kind of lean into some way. So how do you, knowing these two forces, how do you make a good decision? When's the right time to make the decision? When's the right time to lean in and grab the chocolate bar?
Actually, this is a time when the two of them are in cahoots, because We want to avoid painful situations, right? The ape doesn't like to hang around in uncomfortable situations. So that's why we distract ourselves with something else. But interestingly, that distraction is actually feeding the pig at the same time. That's why it's extremely powerful. So acknowledging this is what's going on is the starting point, right? We want to avoid this situation while feeding a quick resolution or a distraction that takes us away. And so that those two forces working together is very strong, and very unlikely our willpower can keep us at bay for much longer. So that's when we start depleting ourselves. So finding things to do that energize us. And I know business owners are extremely busy. This is the time for you to take a break from work. And especially when I say break, a mind break. Because most of the time, when I do my workshops and there's a break, what do? They jump on their phones, check their emails, so on and so forth. So the definition of a break is not necessarily a break. They just get a break from me. I really urge each of you to take a mind break. And a mind break, the definition of a mind break is really stop thinking about stuff. How can you do that? Again, substitute it with something else. Listen to music, go and walk in nature, start observing nature, play with your children, do something that keeps your mind away from the thinking process. Something repetitive. It could be meditation, it could be like my son listens to when he was playing golf. I asked him to do something else. So he started listening to birds and then lawnmowers. So it could be anything that keeps your mind distracted and gives it a break, as opposed to starting to constantly think. And as type A people and business owners and problem solvers, we're constantly trying to solve the problem in the uncertainty, which means all it'll do is spiral you out of control. Because when you don't have the facts, when things are changing on a regular basis, how do you expect to solve it and feel good about it? So all you have to do is be nimble and adaptable, which means you got to have a clear mind. And that comes from giving your mind a break so that it's fresh and ready to tackle the new information that comes in.
Yeah, I love that point where, I've seen it time and time again. I've fallen into this trap. I know other people fall into this trap is they unplug. Okay, I'm done working. I'm gonna go watch some TV. But the show's kind of boring. So I open up my phone. Like this is actually happens to me, and I try to catch myself. I check Facebook, which I'm trying to check. I deleted it from my phone and all that good stuff. But I am a part of 20 different business groups in Facebook. So I immediately go into work mode as soon as I
Mhm.
open up my phone. There's almost now I have Kindle, and that is a distraction. A positive break for my brain to read some fiction or nonfiction. But it is so easy for us to take a break but never unplug.
Yes.
And I think that's what I also want to push all the listeners to, and by extension, your clients. So if you're an accounting firm owner, you might have dozens, hundreds, thousands of small business clients that are also suffering with this. And I think it's important that you create an environment where you can take a break, because you're absolutely right, Krishna. Business owners are problem solvers. We love solving problems. Give us a great problem, and we're gonna put on our firefighter hat and our cape, and we're gonna go solve it. And then in 2 weeks, we're gonna be completely burned out. We're not gonna serve our clients the way we need to. We're not gonna be there for the family that we need to be. And that I think is a very real trap we're all gonna fall into. Is you call it the monkey mind, right? Feeding this problem solver kind of creature.
That's just one of them. I think a type A personality and being a problem solver, which is what raised us to this level, is an addiction at some level. And we just love it because there's a high, right? We feel good about solving a problem. It gives us a sense of accomplishment. So there's a real high that comes out of being a firefighter. Actually, in that set of comments, David, you used my three favorite words. You talk about traps. Traps are what are blind spots that we fall into, right? Traps can really hurt us. So that's one. Then you talked about burnout, and then you talked about the other one. So traps are the ones that hurt us the most, and this is the time where we got to watch out for traps, because when we're in a problem-solving mode and we are going at it 24/7, and we may get tired and go to bed. But if our mind is racing before going to bed, the quality of rest that we get is not adequate enough to get up the next day and go at it. So this is going to be a marathon. This is not a 1 week sprint. This is probably going to last a few quarters. So how can you retain your energy? And by energy, I don't just limit it to physical energy, your mental energy, so that you can actually endure this through 2 or 3 quarters, maybe longer. And you pointed out another point, David, which is you as business owners, accounting firms, and having your own clients, they all are going through the same thing. So if you want to be a resource of a source of calm, a source of wisdom, then you got to step up your energy, because you can't solve their problem. You can't give what you don't have. So how can you build up? And that's what I refer to as repletion. So if you look at depletion and repletion, or I guess in accounting terms, it would be debit and credit. So how you can't just have debits. You got to have some credit somewhere to balance it out. So figure out what the credits are during these time and consciously work on the credits, because otherwise the news, people calling you, the challenges that you're facing are all what I would put on the debit side. Those are the depletions. That's taking stuff away from you. So what you need to do is figure out what are those activities that work for you to replete your energy level, both physical and mental.
Yeah, and I wanted to highlight that point where you said problem solving can be an addiction. I think, and I'm going to characterize business owners with some broad strokes here. Chip, our VP of sales, would say, oh, he's getting out the big paintbrush here, because I'm going to go broad strokes with this and say, typically, well, in my experience, business owners have some sort of chip on their shoulder. They have something that drives them. They had some experience in their life that drive them to create it, for the freedom, for the lifestyle, for the cash. And they're continually rewarded for being problem solvers. But the downside of that, when you become addicted to it and you say, you know what, I need to unplug, and you unplug, then all of a sudden you're sitting there with somebody with a chip on your shoulder, and problem solving is the way you validate your value to the world.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're sitting there, you can't problem solve, and you have incredible anxiety just sitting with yourself. I know this is getting very deep for a typical podcast episode, but I think it's going to go on, right? And so
Absolutely, David. The main thing is right now, it's not like you don't have problems to solve. You have more problems than you can possibly solve. So it's really about catching yourself and consciously adding. I think I just made up the credit aspect of it. Is how do you add to the credits, right? And that's another way, that's a positive distraction, right? If you realize, I mean, accountants know this better than anybody else. You got to work on the credit side too. So if instead of sitting alone and feeling like I don't have any problems to solve, why don't you create the credit side as problems, maybe reframe it as I need to figure out what are the credits at this time that I can actively engage in that boosts up my credit side of the equation.
yeah, and I think there's some worthwhile, you mentioned walking in nature. There's reading, there's, if cooking is your thing, you know,
Oh
I
yeah.
I came across full disclosure, by the way, I'm gonna say this because I know you, but I like cooking so much better than home improvement projects. I know home improvement projects are skyrocketing right now, but home improvement projects stress me out because it could be one day, 1 month, or 1 year. Cooking, I'm going to give something a shot for 45 minutes. If it doesn't work out, I'm making a frozen pizza. I know there's going to be resolution in 90 minutes no matter what I do, but I think there's a lot of hobbies people could pick up, even if they're not going out to the normal hobbies to play golf or tennis or basketball. Um, you mentioned walking in nature. What are some other tactics, I guess, people can start to think about as they're trying to unplug and restore themselves? What have you seen work either well for yourself, or you work with so many business owners and clients? What have you seen work well for them?
The main thing, nature is easy because it's available to most people. And if not, you're stuck in an apartment, you still have a window to look outside. And uh, tuning your attention right now, it's all about how you tune your attention towards certain things. So because we tune our attention typically to problem solving, now you can start tuning that same attention to something else. And I spent yesterday a good part of maybe 30, 40 minutes watching in my backyard this robin build a nest. And every time it drops some of the nest material, let's call it, so let's call that a home improvement project for the robin, the sparrow would come and steal the dropping of the robin and go build its nest. I thought that was hilarious, and I told my daughter about it, and she said, "Yeah, the sparrow's mooching off the robin." I mean, we had such a good time. Under normal circumstances, we would have not noticed that at all. It would have just gone. And we've been in the same house, David, for 20 years, and I've never noticed any of this. But now that I needed a break, I was just looking consciously out of the window to look and pay attention to something, and I saw all this happening, and it was almost like a show of a robin and a sparrow.
Yeah, it's really amazing that when you take a step back and you start to try to hone your awareness. I fall in and out of this all the time, right? So I've been in my house for 2-ish years, and it wasn't until about a week ago that you have this magnolia tree out front, and it was, fortunately before my son woke up, I was like, goodness gracious, this is a beautiful tree, right? It was a really nice mental break for me, and I
Yeah,
needed it more than ever,
yeah.
to view that. Um, there's also something, I know we're going to be running up against time soon, but there's also something to be said of, people say meditation, and it's very intimidating for a lot of people. I'm certainly not perfect in this aspect either, but I know that in the past, when I had done simple meditative exercises, breathing in and out and following my breath, uh, you start to understand how your body's reacting to things, which I think is really important now in the news cycle. When you're getting too much, it helps you build awareness of how your body's starting to feel around certain people or news or whatever. Can you walk us through like one or two exercises that maybe are that do lean more into the meditative state? We'll call it meditation for non-meditators, if that's a phrase.
Or as my friend Dan Harris says, meditation for the fidgety skeptics.
For the fidgety skeptics, yeah.
Yes, there you go. So actually, David, you're asking some beautiful questions. First of all, let's to wrap up the nature piece. Gardening, anything that is repetitive is meditation in my book. So cleaning the yard, putting the path, putting pebbles in an order so that along a path, anything that you do, and I want to use the word kind of mindlessly in a good way, or mindfully, which is you're just doing something and not thinking about it. It's orderly. It's putting some sense of order in your mind. Those are all meditations. And I want to clarify a comment you made. I'm not perfect at it. That is, I think, the biggest myth about meditation. Meditation is about noticing what is going on. That's it. So noticing that you got distracted is part of the meditation.
Yeah,
And
sorry to interject, but I also think your point about gardening, and maybe this is where you're going with the meditation standpoint is, if you are so worried about not thinking about work or family, kids, economy, whatever, and you're like, I gotta clear my mind. I gotta clear my mind. I gotta clear my mind. I can't think about this. I'm gardening. I'm supposed to be peaceful. I'm supposed to be restful. I don't think that's the point, right?
no, not at all. It's really about diverting your attention to something else. And I can start with maybe giving a whole bunch of ideas, starting with the first thing in the morning, right? When you brush your teeth, watch which tooth is being cleaned. That's meditation. Right? Just keep track of it. You'll have so much ample opportunity to meditate. Then when you get into the shower, do you feel the water? Where is the water? As opposed to thinking about what are you going to wear, or what are you going to speak in your first meeting, or what kind of angle you're going to attack the next problem with. So those are everybody has opportunities to figure out which tooth they're brushing, which in 2 minutes you can have a fancy meditation. Then the whole idea is to catch yourself when you go elsewhere and gently come back. Not that I can do this either. A lot of time, type A people, we are the harshest critics of ourselves. Oh, I can't even meditate. And we beat ourselves. The whole idea is to raise our awareness. For example, you made another awesome point, David, which was listen to your body signals. For example, when you're getting anxious, some portion of your body will give you that clue before you realize it. For example, for me, it is my mouth going dry. For others, it may be tightness somewhere or getting flushed. Different body signals work for different people. And it's like the dashboard. Use the body dashboard to give you clues so that you can stop yourself before you go off the handle or before you go into the knee-jerk reaction. So there are a lot of clues that your body gives you as signals that if we tune our attention, so this is a great time when we are by ourselves to pay attention to and learn new things about yourselves, the clues that your body gives you, and the time that you could look outside and observe things that you've not had time for before, and focusing on anything that drains you, whether it is the news, whether it's a friend that talks mainly about the world coming to an end. These are things that deplete you. These are the debits. These are draining activities. Watch out for those like you could never done it before. And this is with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues, whoever else. Because right now, the only thing that can keep you healthy is your immunity. And whatever you need to do to keep your immunity strong, which is usually starts with rest, nutrition, exercise, positive attitude, all of these things are what's going to keep you and keep this virus at bay until we have a cure or a vaccine. So I strongly recommend you monitor the debit side of your energy and the credit side of your energy, and using an accounting thing, make sure the credit side is higher than the debit side.
Yeah, and I would push everybody listening that if you do find a moment to be by yourself, and you highlighted some brilliant examples, brushing your teeth, being in the shower, we don't think of these things as places where we could meditate or be with ourselves. I would say for, and I could say this around you because you're a recovering engineer, as you like to say. Um, we When you're by yourself, don't be another thing that depletes yourself. And what I mean by that is if you put so much pressure to, well, Krishna, I heard this interview and Krishna said that when I'm in the shower, I should only think about the water. And I start thinking about work. And I say, oh, I shouldn't think about work. Why am I thinking about work? No, it's supposed to be about the shower. But this is a really important problem. Let me think through this problem. I'll get to the shower later. And then by the time you're done with the shower, you're like, I didn't even have time to do this meditative thing. This killed, and you just exhausted yourself by having this just like internal battle against
Yep.
yourself. And that's what I mean. Don't deplete yourself. And I know you've talked about this in the past, is when you have a work issue come up or family worry come up, you could just say, oh, that's interesting. Just recognize that it's come up. Don't try to push it away, because I forget what parable you've used, but when you push something like that away, it probably comes back even stronger.
Mhm.
Say, oh, that's interesting. Do I want to think about this now? Should I think about it later? Do I need to think about this at all? Just recognize that and don't beat yourself up if you start thinking about something else, right?
Absolutely, David. And I think you touched on recognition. So denial is not a good idea. Recognition and jumping into it is not the right answer. So the key thing is to recognize it and figure out, much like how we allocate tasks, right? We all have more to-dos in our life than we can in a single day. So what do? We take some of the to-dos and put it for tomorrow or next week, or delegate it to somebody else. I think all those resources are still available to us. We don't have to solve all the problems of the world. This is a perfect time for you to leverage your team, and the team could be at home or at work. And you'll soon start to realize who the real stars are, people who are able to calmly, coolly exercise good judgment in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, that's great. Krishna, this has been a blast. This is such a different type of interview, but I think it's more critical than ever before. It's always been important to talk about these topics, but now more than ever, if somebody was listening to this and you were full already, you already had a lot of work problems, drama, whatever going on in your life, and then all of a sudden you put this, and now you're just overloaded. All of a sudden you might have to be a school teacher overnight. You might have, those family issues you've been putting off. Well, now you're with your family 24/7. They're right in your face. All of these things are coming up, and I think this is just such an important topic. If somebody listening, this really resonates for them, and they want to reach out, they want to learn more about what you do, they want to learn more about the book, your materials, your content, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
With me personally is my website, KrishnaPendyala.com. And I write quite a bit on LinkedIn, and I share a lot on my blog, which is on my website, KrishnaPendyala.com. And obviously the book is available, which is Beyond the Pig and the Ape, which is really mainly written for dealing with impulse control. And at this time, when, as you said, David, when everything is over the top, impulse control becomes, the value of impulse control becomes even more important, because when we have time, like you said beautifully, if you cook and in under 45 minutes it doesn't work out, you order frozen pizza, or you take out the pizza from the freezer, or you order from a delivery service. But in more difficult or important things, we don't have time to do it over. So you got to kind of get it right, which means you got to be more deliberate and considerate and not just react. I think the key is to how to cultivate a wise response to the things that are coming at you. And going back to what I said earlier, it starts with the pause.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this and some of this material really resonated with you, what I would recommend is share it with a fellow firm owner. You know, we're all going through this. I can't imagine a single firm owner that can't benefit from this interview. And I've never said this about any other interview, but I would recommend for everybody listening, pick one or two firm owners and say, hey, I know we're going through a lot, or share it with that Facebook group or LinkedIn group and say, you know, this is something that nobody's really talking about. We're all talking about the tactical business stuff. And look, we've had a lot of interviews on it as well, but I highly encourage the listeners to share it with somebody they know that could benefit with it. And if you really love this interview, you want more interviews like this, leave a review, shoot me a note, and let us know that you enjoyed this content. Final thing I'll say, if you are doing one of those home projects, if you are cooking right now and you just have this podcast playing in the background or this video playing in the background, you couldn't capture all the notes, all the highlights, the links that Krishna mentioned to his book, to his website. Well, everything's going to be listed at jetpackworkflow.com/blog, jetpackworkflow.com/blog. We'll host everything there. We'll do a 1,000 plus word write-up of today's show. We're going to link everything up. And Krishna, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, David. Pleasure to be with you.